In this video, we will complete our registration project by creating a registration page in the client tier. The registration page will call a servlet in the web tier that talks to the enterprise Java beans that we created in the business tier and will update the registration database in the enterprise tier. We will then create a confirmation page in the client tier to show that the record was updated properly. We are back in NetBeans, and I want to create a servlet in the RegistrationProject-war file. I'm going to right-click, New, Other. I want this to be a web category, and we're going to make this a servlet. I'll click Next, and we'll give the servlet name Registration Servlet. And I will create a package name Registration Servlet PKG. Do I want to add the information to the deployment descriptor, the web XML? I do not need to do that for this servlet, so I will leave that unchecked, clicking Finish. And here's our servlet. We want this servlet to talk to our enterprise Java beans. In the previous servlet, to do that, we needed to add in some lines here after the public class. We're going to do the same thing here. We're entering in EJB, and the registration facadeLocal is one of our entity beans, as well as our registry Facade. We're getting the error message that it cannot find. I'm going to right-click in this window and select Fix Imports. We want the EJB and the registry facadeLocal. Clicking OK. We see they get added to our imports. Going down further, just like in our previous servlet, we're going to delete out the default HTML and add in our own. I'm going to paste in the code, and once again I will put this code out on the website, thefrugalcomputerguy.com/J2EE registration project. Let's look at this code that we just added. First thing we do is we declare some string variables and some integer variables, and then we've got this Boolean variable of valid data. We are setting our variables to the parameters that we sent from our registration form. We're declaring a registry object. Then we're checking to see if the integer is numeric by parsing it into the integer variable. If it's valid, it moves on. If not, we set this valid data to false, and we have an error message here. This is the only validation we do in this entire project because it's meant to focus on the J2EE, not the validation. You should already be familiar with how to validate code. We will want to validate all the variables in the servlet as well as the registration web page. We're skipping all that here to focus on the J2EE code. After checking for validation, we're moving the current time into our timestamp. If it's valid, let's look at the not valid first. If it's not valid data, we come to this else, we move our error message to error message, and we go back to the registration form. If it is valid, we set all of our variables in the registry to the values that were passed in from the registration page. We then have registration facade create, that is in the registration local. So we're using create here. We're not using edit, so I can comment that out. We're not using remove, comment that out. Registry find, we're not using that. We are using find all, so we will want that. I'm commenting out the find range and the int count. So these are the only two things that we are using in the registry facade local. Let's save that. Going back to our registration servlet, after we create the item in the database, we're going to set the attributes so that we can send these to the registration confirmation page. And that's all we have to the servlet. Let's create the registration page. We want new, other, web, JSP. Next, we will give this the name, registration form, and this will be a JSP standard syntax. Finish. It creates a blank page. I'm going to select the HTML to the HTML and paste in some code. I'll also put this out on the website. This is called registration page is the title. From here we are declaring the values, bringing them in from the registration servlet. If they're null, we set them all to spaces or nothing. We are creating our form. The form will call RegistrationProject-war registration servlet. That's that servlet that we just created. It's going to send all these values that we type in, and then it will print out the message if it receives one from this registration servlet telling us that the zip code is not numeric. Then we've got a little footer. That's all there is to this. I will save it, and we will create the confirmation page. Right click, new, other, web, JSP. Next, we will give this the name, registration confirmation, JSP file standard syntax. Once again, I'm going to select HTML to HTML, paste in some code. Again, we've got the variables coming in. And then we just create a table and print them out. And that's all there is to the confirmation form. I am going to click on the project, right click, and clean and build. We see the build is successful. I'm going to right click and run the project. NetBeans has opened up my browser, my default browser, and entered in the project information, the localhost 8080 registration project-war. I need to type in the Java server page that I want it to bring up. That will be the registration form JSP. Pressing enter. Here's a registration page. Let's enter in a name, John Doe. He will live at 1234 Main Street, APT 12, Anytown, California, .48226. The country will be US. Actually, let's try that zip code, make it alphabetic, AABC. And we should get this screen back with an error message. There it says zip code is not numeric. Let's create a numeric zip code, 59234. And we get the message, thank you for your submission. John Doe, Main Street, 12, Anytown, California. Let's close the browser, go over to our services, and make sure that our database was updated properly. I'll need to connect to it. And I want to view the data on the registry table. There we see ID 3 John Doe 1234 Main, Anytown, California, and the date registered. That completes our J2EE project. I hope you enjoyed this short video tutorial series and learned a lot. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video tutorial, please tell a friend.